Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give this a minute or so to allow more people to get onto Zoom with us, and then we'll get started. Again, folks, we're just waiting for Zoom to load more of our participants onto the call, and then we'll begin. Well, I want to welcome everyone. I'm Jeff Follansbee, and I'm a Senior Vice President of the institution and also the Chief Advancement Officer. We're very, very pleased to have you join us today for this update on the 2021 season. I'm going to turn this over to Michael in just a second. I would remind you that you may ask a question by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I would recommend that you wait until we have gone through most of the presentation because I think that a lot of your questions will be answered, and that will make it easier for those of us, i.e. myself, I guess, who's trying to figure out what questions to ask. We have a lot that were submitted in advance. And so as we juggle through all of that, if we can wait and see whether the question you have gets answered by the presentation, that would be great. We're again, really pleased to have you here, and I'm going to turn this over to Michael. Michael?
Thanks, Jeff, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for being here as we report on the December meeting of our Board of Trustees, which focused on our plans for the 2021 summer assembly season. We know that these conversations and deliberations have been of significant interest to many Chautauquans. We want to thank you for your attention, your engagement, and your feedback over the past month, all of which has been extremely helpful to our planning. I'm really happy and encouraged to report that the Board of Trustees at its meeting just about a week ago approved the administration's proposal to return to an in-person summer assembly season in 2021. We introduced to the board the framework of the proposal last week, and we certainly have been sharing that evolving framework with you over the last month. And based on our continued analysis and your feedback, we've modified that approach, and that's what we hope to present to you today. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic greatly influenced the context of our proposal and our ongoing planning for summer 2021. We expect that resulting state and federal regulations will continue to have an impact on the way we convene people, the ways that we use our venues, and the cost of doing business. Based on our experience and success in keeping our community safe since March, we're confident in our ability to work within these regulations, to adapt as necessary, and continue to keep our community safe while also returning to a more normal mode of operations. We're planning for a summer assembly that welcomes patrons to our sacred grounds in southwestern New York, where core programs will be presented in the Chautauqua Amphitheater, and other activities and programs will be presented and hosted in venues and open air spaces as much as possible. While safety and mission remain our top priorities, our vision is to create and offer a Chautauqua experience that's as close to our traditional experience as possible. Alongside the traditional experience, we'll experiment with some new kinds of ticketing and activities as supplements to the traditions that we know you cherish. There will be 3 primary pathways to the Chautauqua experience in 2021. The first pathway is the traditional Chautauqua Gate Pass. This pass provides access to the grounds and to all programming in the Chautauqua Amphitheater, except up to 2 programs each week that would require purchasing an extra ticket. Traditional Gate Pass purchasers will be given the first opportunity to purchase tickets to popular entertainment events that they wish to attend. The second pathway is the Chautauqua No Amp Gate Pass. It provides access to the grounds and amenities with the option to purchase tickets to the amphitheater events that you might be interested in, more in an a la carte fashion. Both traditional and the No Amp Gate Pass come with a CHQ Assembly subscription for the duration of the Gate Pass, allowing you to enjoy all of the programs that are available on CHQ Assembly. The third pathway to a Chautauqua experience is the Chautauqua Day Pass. Patrons will be welcome to purchase day or partial day passes, just as they have in the past. We anticipate that this 3-pathway approach will accommodate all who wish to attend and help us to understand more about the differing priorities and desires of our community of communities. At the same time, it'll enable us to manage attendance in our venues, which will be an important part of our COVID-19 safety plan that you'll hear later about today. I wanted to share with you a look at what we believe the core amphitheater program will look like. Each weekday, we'll start with morning worship at 9 a.m. The Chautauqua Lecture Series, which we know many refer to as the 1045, will be offered at 10:30 this summer, Monday through Thursday. On Fridays each week, one of the speakers of the week will offer a masterclass available through purchase through our Special Studies Master and Enrichment class program. Moving the Chautauqua Lecture Series 15 minutes earlier will allow us to host the Interfaith Lecture Series at 1 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of each week. Evening entertainment will feature up to 4 Chautauqua Performing Arts programs and up to 2 popular entertainment or other external artist events each week. We'll continue our tradition of free Sundays, which will feature morning worship and the evening sacred song service. Sunday afternoon programs will be offered whenever possible, but there may be some Sunday afternoons when no programs are staged at the amphitheater. In addition to this core program, we hope to offer chamber music at the Hall of Philosophy, outdoor movies on selected evenings, student performances and master classes at the Hall of Philosophy and Midnight Hall, and also our new organist, Josh Stafford, plans to offer organ concerts each week. We're hopeful to welcome back favorite events such as Art in the Park, the Fire Department Sunday Barbecue, and the Juried Arts and Crafts Festival. Our normal food service options will be supplemented by special events and food trucks, as well as new ways to experience our beautiful lakefront at the Pier Building. Chautauqua Literary Arts and the CLSC will be featured either as part of the morning lecture series or online via CHQ Assembly. Other programs we hope to offer on CHQ Assembly include the African American Heritage Lecture Series and the Chautauqua Women's Club Contemporary Issues Forum. CHQ Assembly will also present live and on demand as many of the amphitheater programs as our speaker and artist agreements will permit. Special Studies Master and Enrichment classes will be offered both face-to-face and online at learn.chq.org. And our School of Performing and Visual Arts will be in session, but on a stage schedule across the entire summer season, so we can house students all in private rooms. In short, we have a Herculean series of tasks and plans ahead of us, but we know we're up to the challenge, and we've been encouraged by your advice and your support. In the event that forces outside of our control prevent us from pursuing this plan for 2021, we do have a fallback plan that the board has approved that will enable us to operate the grounds and CHQ Assembly in a way similar to summer 2020. But this would only come into play if necessary. In all cases, we would protect our patrons' investments in ticket and gate fees with very generous refund policies. Philanthropy has always played a major role at Chautauqua in subsidizing programs and making the overall experience possible. We remain grateful to the many Chautauquans who increased their giving in 2020, including those who donated or deferred their 2020 gate pass and ticketing purchases. Their generosity, your generosity, was humbling, and we want you to know that we don't take it for granted. In 2021, philanthropy will play an even more important role as we recover from the impact of the pandemic. A special and targeted initiative has been created as a bridge to the future, and the Chautauqua Fund will remain an important priority to achieving our goals in 2021 and beyond. I want to thank all of you who have kept Chautauqua among your philanthropic priorities at a time when we know many of the organizations you care about are also expressing unique and additional needs. I also want to acknowledge that Chautauquans give in many ways. For example, in 2020, many of our property owners who rent made great sacrifices related to rental deposit refunds and deferrals. We're grateful to those property owners for their flexibility that they demonstrated in the interests of our patrons and in our community. And before I ask my colleagues to offer some additional detail and then move on to the Q&A portion of our time together, I want to share a video that paints a picture of what we hope to achieve in 2021. Of course, our venues may not be able to be as full as some of the images from the past reflect in this video, but we will be together again. We will find enrichment, we'll experience joy, and we'll create hope at Chautauqua in 2021. Please take a look.
There is a place where friends and family assemble with open minds and good times. We check in on the world. And this is the place with something for everyone. Tell the children you're coming. They yearn to be here. So sail on the water and discover the culture. Stroll down the brick walk, meet neighbors and new friends. Come find this place where others have gathered. Built over generations, it's made new by you. Named USA Today's Best Small Town Cultural Scene. This is the place. Chautauqua, New York. It won't be Chautauqua without you.
I really love that video. It came about partially because we knew we had so many new people engaging with Chautauqua through CHQ Assembly, and we wanted them to see what an on-grounds experience would be like. I also hope you noticed and that at the end of that video, there was a special URL that we've created that's helping people understand how to come here safely, recognizing that this summer, even with vaccines rolling out this week, we know it will be a summer with restrictions and guidelines. I mentioned at the top of this that I offered thanks to you all for providing survey responses and emails about a whole host of things. And in a spirit of transparency, Emily Morris, who is our Senior Vice President and Chief Brand Officer, is going to review those survey responses and share a little bit more about what we heard and how that is informing our pathway for the summer. So, Emily.
Thanks, Michael. Just get my settings correct here so we're not interrupted with screen blocks. Thank you. The survey population that we reached out to at around November 11th right after we had our series of webinars last month, were our property owners, a group of people we call our leadership list. These are people who are also donors to the institution. And then, okay, sorry. And then also anyone who purchased a long-term ticket, that's an overnight or longer, from 2018 to 2020. The sample size was any email addresses that we had in the mail files of this population. And that gave us about almost 15,000 emails to send the survey to. Of those, 2,099 responded, or 14% of that sample. And within that, 19% were property owners, 16% were from that leadership list, and 53% were people who had purchased long-term tickets. 12% we couldn't assign to any one of those organizations or any one of those segments, but we assume were at least one of those segments. Those percentages represent 23% of our property owners, 15% of our leadership group, and 10% of the people who purchased long-term tickets in the past. The first series of questions asked folks to give us a sense of the proposed program that we presented in the survey. Now, as you saw from Michael's presentation, that program has changed a bit since the initial iteration based on your feedback. But given that first swipe at the program, 70% overall thought it was a reasonable way to approach the Chautauqua program in 2021. Even a higher percentage of people, and you can see how it breaks down across the segments of property owners, the leadership group, and our long-term pass holders. You all have pretty good faith in our ability to operate a safe environment, and we take that advice very well, and we'll continue to focus on that. A smaller percentage said that you would plan to attend, about 65%, if you like the program. So we know the program is important to you, not just the schedule, but what's going to happen throughout that schedule. And the last two questions were, will you attend? I will ask you to respond to the question, I will not attend without an effective treatment or vaccine. And the last question was, I will attend regardless, but I won't attend program without an effective treatment or vaccine. And it seems that smaller groups of our respondents are as concerned about that if you plan to attend, you're probably going to come into program. And the percentage you said that you would not attend without a treatment or vaccine really does correspond to the percentage of people who said you would attend if you like the program. The second series of questions asked you to respond to our preliminary plan for gate pass strategy, where we would offer that traditional pass minus the amphitheater, minus the popular entertainment in the amphitheater. And then we would offer this additional pass type, the no amp pass, for people who might rather choose program a la carte at Chautauqua. And so almost 70% overall said that they thought that gate pass strategy seemed reasonable. And then yet a smaller percentage, 36, almost 37%, said that the gate pass structure isn't really an important consideration for you. So that's a pretty interesting finding. They like the structure, but doesn't really impact whether you're going to come or not, I think is what that says. And then a little bit of ambivalence about the idea of selling popular entertainment separately, with 23% overall telling us they were neutral on that. So we look at that as an opportunity to roll that out carefully and continue to communicate the reasons why we feel like we have to do that in 2021. And as you will recall from our presentations last month and the survey, if you took it, we are anticipating that we're going to have to limit attendance in the amphitheater to 50% of that venue's capacity. And so that's one of the main reasons why we thought we needed to change the way we present gate passes to our patrons, so that we can manage the capacity in a safe way, that limited capacity in the amphitheater in a safe way. The next series of questions asked you to respond to our ideas about what we were calling scenario B, and that is the scenario in the event that the state essentially tells us you're not allowed to offer programs, you're not allowed to welcome 50% of the capacity of the amphitheater into that venue. So if we would be told we couldn't proceed with scenario A. Scenario B would be something that looks a lot like what we did this past summer. Nearly 70% of you said that seemed like a reasonable approach. Some of you suggested that should be the approach we should just go for and not even try to do programming in the venue. That's the response that the green bar is reflecting. And I wanted to pull apart the responses to our question, would you agree for us to reinstate gate pass and parking fees in a scenario B? We didn't have any fees this past summer as we were learning how to deal with COVID, but we're looking at expenses and recognizing that is not a sustainable business model for us. So only almost 36% overall said that seemed like a reasonable approach to do an appropriately priced gate pass. Another 20% were neutral on that, and we're assuming that means that some question, what do you mean by appropriately priced? So thinking that that's telling us that the price will be important. And then 43% overall. Smaller percentages when you look at the responses of property owners and leadership donors are not in support of that gate pass implementation in the event of scenario B. So we're taking that to heart. That's important feedback. We know that there's not great support for that idea across the board. That needs to impact the way we would administer that and also the price point of that in the event of scenario B. But we're really focused on scenario A because that's what we've been given permission to plan for, and scenario B is really just a fallback position for us at this point. So we're really hoping that conversation doesn't need to be had. We also asked folks to give us a sense of what other kinds of programs are important to them other than those programs that we've outlined as part of the core amphitheater schedule. Just to get a sense of, what are the things that really create your Chautauqua mix for you? And these were presented independently, so you could rate each of them on a scale of 1 to 5. And you'll see probably a lower level of response for youth programs that corresponds with the respondents who have youth in their families that come to Chautauqua with them. Among that population, youth programs are very important, and we heard that loud and clear. But you can see, obviously, the CSO had the largest number of 4 and 5 ratings in terms of its importance to your Chautauqua experience, followed by theater. And you can see where schools. Community programs we articulated, if you recall, as programs such as the lectures by the African American Heritage House, the Chautauqua Women's Club, our Bird Tree and Garden Club, and our denomination houses are what we ask people to respond to under that community programs label. And then we asked you to tell us what you think about some pilot projects that we were imagining in this non-traditional summer that we could implement to enhance your experience and potentially learn something about whether this is something you'd like to see moving forward. And we painted a picture of, food and beverage options and amenities at the lakefront down by the pier building. Very popular, very good idea, according to our respondents. So we hear that loud and clear. Also, we learned this past summer, but we see that outdoor recreation and fitness experiences are very important to our population, as are some additional culinary events. So some exciting opportunities for us to explore. We also did mention that we might want to experiment on a couple of occasions with leveraging that space around the amphitheater in order to accommodate demand in those really high events, high demand sold out events, mostly evening entertainment. So maybe you'll see an experiment pop up around the amp. And then we also suggested, what if we would host some weddings on the grounds? Normally that is not permitted in a summer assembly season. Smaller number of people thought that was a good idea, probably similar to youth programs related to whether weddings are part of their mind space right now in their family. Wanted to go over top level pricing for our tickets and our gate passes. And of course, we'll be sending you detailed information about this in the mail and online. But our traditional Chautauqua program pass that gets you into the amphitheater for all of those programs, except as many as 2 programs a week that would be under our popular entertainment series, those would be sold separately. That's priced at $100 a day, which includes the overnight. And of course, you can see there in the middle of the screen how that breaks out to the day parts. So those are very close to our previous pricing for those day passes and day parts. That rolls up to $440 a week, which is a 26% discount on that day rate. And then $21.49 for a season, or a 54.27% discount on the weekly rate, and a larger discount certainly on that daily rate. For that new pass type that we're proposing for 2021, the no AMP pass, it would be $170 a week and $1,530 for the season. And it's important to note that we're not planning to sell that no AMP pass for single day experiences except on Fridays and Saturdays. And certainly we're going to still offer those kinds of passes that some of you have used. If you are a property owner, we have the resident guest pass option if you're welcoming somebody to your house for dinner or something like that. And that's also available to people who are renting our private accommodations. And of course, the business and service employee pass will also be available, which is for the people who work in the businesses on the grounds. Our popular entertainment would be priced per show. And so, of course, that depends, particularly on the price of the performance. And we have some of those programs announced, and we'll be announcing that pricing soon as well. Parking and dock rates would be at 2020 rates, so no increase in that price. And because of the limited capacity in the amphitheater, we do imagine that we're going to have to manage our complimentary and employee comp passes. We generally refer to this as comp passes, but we acknowledge there are a couple of different types of comp passes. We're going to have to manage those a little bit differently than we have in the past, because we think there will be some events where the full capacity of the amphitheater is going to be taken by people who've purchased passes. And so we may need to ask our comp pass holders to wait for an availability check before they take a seat in those limited circumstances. We don't want our comp pass holders to think we don't want them to come to program. That is not what we're saying. We welcome you, as we always have, into the Chautauqua experience, but we're going to have to differentiate your experience a little bit in this very limited capacity environment, and we ask for your support and understanding in that circumstance. And just like the traditional program pass, the complimentary pass in 2021 would not include popular entertainment, so those would need to be purchased by anyone using a comp pass if they wish to attend. This is a lot of dates, so don't get too hung up on the detail on this slide. Again, we'll be publishing this information, but we wanted to reflect that we know that because things will be different in 2021, that our sales process might take a little bit longer. Each telephone call might take a little bit longer. So we're going to do a staged on sale where we would start with our property owners to make their purchase first. And then a week later, property owners can continue to make their purchases, but then we would begin to take orders from our generous Chautauquans who were able to either donate or defer their gate pass fee. Last year, we would start taking orders for your ticketing and gate pass needs on January 26th, then moving on to our past season pass holders on February 2nd, and then opening up sales to all patrons on February 9th. We think we're going to need to wait until March before we begin selling popular entertainment. And I just want to note again that anyone who purchases that traditional Chautauqua Gate Pass that includes the programs in the amphitheater, you're going to be given the first opportunity to make your popular entertainment purchases. You've already told us by virtue of your purchase that program is important to you. And so we're going to stage you first in the availability of popular entertainment, both on March 2nd when we start those sales and throughout the rest of the spring as we book new popular entertainment acts. As you recall, we don't often have everything booked for the whole season by March 2nd. So as we confirm new acts, we'll roll out those sales starting with the traditional gate pass purchasers. And you can see how the rest of the season rolls out. We anticipate we may institute, as we have in the past, some price increases later in the sales cycle. If we do, the first would happen on March 16th, and the final price increase for those gate passes would happen on May 28th. So as usual, you're going to get your best price if you purchase early. And I do just want to reference again what Michael said. We continue to offer a very flexible refund policy. So up until the start of the season, you're going to be able to get a full refund for any purchases that you make if your plans change. And if you've purchased that traditional gate pass, you're going to be able to get a full refund up until the start of that pass. So we want you to be able to plan your Chautauqua experience with confidence and understand that we're going to work with you, as we always do, if your plans change in this environment that remains a little uncertain for many of us. With that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Deborah.
Thank you, Emily, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm just so happy to be able to talk a little bit more about program with all of you. And I wanted to share that I'm representing many programmers that are just so excited to be working on building back much of the program that you care so much about. You can probably see that Matt Ewald is here with us today to help answer questions at the end of the session. And just know that there are so many program directors and artistic directors that are really working on building back as much program as we feel that we are safely able to do. So Michael already went through with you the basic amphitheater schedule, and that is mostly encapsulated in that first grid that you see on the screen here. So you already know the schedule of this, that we will have morning worship, moving into the Chautauqua lecture series, which is now at 10:30 for 4 days, moving on to the interfaith lecture series, which is 3 days, moving on to that evening entertainment. So we do hope to have the amphitheater entertainment be Monday through Saturday. And you can see here that we have up to 4 Chautauqua resident or school performances per week, and no more than 2 popular entertainment events with sacred song services on Sunday. So let me unpack that a little bit for you. We have different things that we are planning in all of these scenarios, and I will share what those ensemble and school performances are intended to be. Of course, all of this will depend on safety guidelines, but this is what we're planning for right now. The most important thing that many of you may want to know is what experience and what we're expecting from the Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra. It will be a significant amount of time before we can announce any of the CSO program and plan because of safety guidelines, and also how that affects the orchestra size and the orchestra safety. This is also a negotiation year for the collective bargaining agreement with the CSO. Because of this, we really have to wait until we are able to announce a plan together with our musicians for the 2021 season. But of course, we hope that CSO will be a core part of this programming. When you see the up to 4 weeks for the entertainment from resident ensembles, it is our hope that the Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra will be the largest part of that footprint. You can also depend on some of the student performances that we hope have thrilled you and inspired you in the past. The Music School Festival Orchestra should be planning to return for the first half of the season. And I'll talk a little bit more about that timeline in a minute. But most importantly, I wanted you to know, for those of you that have asked, that the Music School Festival Orchestra will still be seen on Monday evenings, and that would be happening week 1 through 4. So let me pause to explain how that schedule of the schools is working. You heard Michael mention earlier that we would be planning for 1 student per dorm room. And I want to share with you that we've been working with other national festivals on what we all feel is the safest way we can offer program and still bring these students that are very much relying on us to continue training them and being their mentors. So with that plan, we know that we do have to accept less students, but we have decided to try and serve as many students as possible for a shorter period of time. And this means that our School of Performing and Visual Arts will happen on different timelines this summer. The School of Music will be meeting weeks 0 through weeks 3. And that will allow the MSFO to have a concert prepared for you when you arrive on week 1. We will do a deep cleaning in week 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, we will have our School of Dance. So for that part of the season, you will be able to expect those School of Dance performances that happen in the amphitheater. We are hoping at this time that the School of Art will be able to go for an additional week being present in weeks 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 5, 6, 7, 8, yes, and week 9, because those students are typically much older. Many of them have already graduated from college, or they're simply older students at a different period of their life. And so while most of our students have to be back at college in week 9, we believe that we can keep our School of Art students on the campus for that amount of time. Speaking of the School of Art, I should share with you that we do plan to have our galleries open for the entire summer. And of course, those are online as well. So we have a lot to expect from our student ensembles and from the Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra. And so we hope that you are as excited about that possibility as we are. I wanted to move on to the second grid. Let me move back to it here. And on that, you will see that we have some other possible additional programs. We do hope that we will be able to have chamber music. We are looking and exploring what a good and safe venue would be. And we know that the Hall of Philosophy would allow for that open air that's so important, especially when we're talking about instruments or voice and everything that that entails. We think that chamber music this time might be a combination of CSO and guests, but that's still something we're going to have to wait and determine when we know more about those safety guidelines around instrumental and vocal music. We are intending to offer student performances and master classes. And with those, I can tell you that our footprint for all of schools is going to be much larger. Where one student ensemble might typically take one venue, we know that with safety precautions, we have to spread them out into many more venues. And that is just one of the things that's making our venues be more full this year, even though we are building back less program than we would in a typical year. As Michael mentioned, we hope to have those wonderful organ concerts by our new organist. And we also are looking at other core programs such as literary arts and CLSC. Those will be happening on the Chautauqua Assembly. But I also wanted to note that our Director of Literary Arts, Soni Toname and Matt Ewalt, are planning for those CLSC authors to sometimes be featured as part of the Chautauqua Lecture Series, now at 10:30, when that makes sense for the theme. So we hope that for CLSC, it will not only be on the Assembly, but that it will also have some representation on the Chautauqua Lecture Series. We have some core community programs such as the African American Heritage House and the Chautauqua Women's Club. We are working with them to make those programs available on the Chautauqua Assembly. And we also mentioned earlier that outdoor movies may be a special ad this summer. We're looking at some creative ways to do additional programming like that. And I wanted to add that theater and opera are definitely going to be part of our planning for this summer. We don't have details for you at this time because there is so much that we're working on with the various unions involved and the safety guidelines that we assume will continue to change as the months go on. The important thing I wanted to share with you is that both theater and opera, we are trying to build back part of their seasons so that we can offer you something that will surprise and delight you. Of course, these will look different than in past summers because we are still investigating what venues will be the safest place to hold their events, but they are considering different repertoire that I think will really excite you. The last thing I wanted to mention here is that you'll see we've also listed youth and family programming there. And even though on the surveys, you may have noticed that it looked as if that was a lower ranking of importance, but we certainly acknowledge for any of you with children and grandchildren, we know just how important these programs are to you. I want to assure you that Vice President of Education, Matt Ewalt, and Director of Youth and Family Programming, Alyssa Porter, have been working tirelessly on looking at different scenarios for 2021. I'll share with you that we are working toward as fulsome a program as we might be able to have within the various guidelines. In addition to the safety guidelines, which of course are guiding all of our program decisions, youth and family programs also have an additional set of guidelines. The state of New York has mandates and rules for day camps, which apply to us because our club and school do fall under the definition of a day camp. Because of this, we can't tell you at this time what our exact programming will be, But we are moving forward with all of these guidelines, and we're certainly excited to build back these programs for 2021. So with that, know that we're going to watch the guidelines closely. We will continue to work toward a program that engages youth and family. We will definitely be able to offer you something if we are in this scenario A for programming. So as the video says, tell your children that you're coming. We are definitely planning for you. So that is a few more details about the program in addition to the schedule. You could hear throughout that so much of what's determining what we can build back in program is based on those safety guidelines. So this time I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Shannon Rosner to talk about those safety guidelines.
Thanks so much, Deborah, and thanks to everyone for being with us this afternoon. I think nothing I'm about to describe is going to surprise anyone who's been listening for the past 40 minutes. You've heard often from my colleagues that we're waiting to see what the safety guidelines are. I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A, so I'll just very briefly summarize the points in this slide. We are already very hard at work getting ready to offer the safest summer we're able to this year. We've formed a 16-member safety committee that's comprised of staff from across the organization. We'll be working with expert advisors in all the fields you would expect, and some of you actually on the call may be getting an email from me soon enough asking for your help in being one of those expert advisors. We're going to use our community expertise and generosity as much as we can in that area. We're working in stages, and the important takeaway here is that the stage right now is learning. We are learning what our facilities can and can't do in terms of things like air exchange and airflow, traffic flow, etc. We're literally running around with tape measures, figuring that sort of thing out. And we're also thinking about how our programmers are thinking about how they want to use those facilities and how they want to use the grounds in general. And we need to match those things up. What do our facilities look like? How can they be safely utilized to do what the programmers want to do? That's our ultimate goal, and that will result in protocols that answer a lot of the specific questions that we all have right now. We're hearing from a lot of folks questions like, will you be requiring proof of vaccination? Will you be testing people? How will you manage social distancing in the amphitheater? Those are all incredibly important questions. And before we turn to Q&A, I would say that the theme around safety is we're learning, we're evaluating right now, and the specific answers to those questions, we want to give time for the ever-evolving virus news. Just this week is an example of how quickly these things are changing. We want to give that some time to settle in before we get specific about the measures we're going to be required to take and need to take under all of the guidance we're looking at, which includes New York State, WHO, CDC, and the unions that we're working with that Deborah alluded to have also offered guidelines on how to safely produce some of our programs. So, so expect a lot more information in the coming months, and know that we are hard at work getting ready to welcome you back as safely as we can this summer. With that, I am turning it back to Jeff and Michael.
And I
Thank
think
you,
I am
Shannon.
simply teeing over to Jeff.
Yeah, we have about 60 questions, I think, here. So let's get right at it. I just say one thing. This webinar will be posted along with the presentation so that you'll be able to go back and review it. Updates, it's on 2021.chq.org, 2021.chq.org. It will be up in a day or so, a few days, and updates about the season you can find there as well. Deborah and Michael, a lot of questions about the schedule in the amphitheater, cutting back on lectures. Is this about logistics in the amphitheater or finances?
I will let Deborah answer that because it is primarily about logistics and she is navigating all that quite well. So Deborah.
Sure. So I would say, is it logistics or is it finances? It's both. And so we're trying to respond to all of these things. But the third thing it's about is also safety and knowing that we need to plan around that. So Michael alluded to this early, but I'll just walk you through it a little bit more. The reason why we have the first lecture series bumped up is so we can have the 1 p.m. interfaith lecture. And one of the things we haven't covered is the reason why we have that at 1 o'clock instead of 2 is because we need to make sure that the space is safely cleared for the rehearsal, the dress rehearsal that has to happen before that evening performance. That's a really tight schedule on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. On Thursday, we hope to give the CSO more time to rehearse, and that's one of the many reasons that we don't have that interfaith lecture series on Thursday. And on Friday, there are many reasons that we don't have that 5th lecture. The first one is, in general, the big picture we want you to keep in mind is that we're trying to build back program in a way that is safe and responsible. We are assuming that our venues might be allowed to have a 50% capacity, but of course we can't know that for sure. And what we're trying to do at this point is to plan for a program that we feel as confident as possible that we will be able to present to you. One of the things you may have noticed that has shifted is we started out with our suggested program grid about a month ago, was going to have 3 of those Chautauqua lecture series. We heard back on survey that many of you thought that this was not the balance you wanted and that you really wanted to see more from the lecture series. So we have added that 4th, which we're excited about. Programmatically, even though our changes are mainly because of logistics and safety, we're actually excited about this option because Matt and the lecture program for a long time have been asked to provide experiences that might allow everyone to go deeper. So we hope that we are making lemonade out of lemons here and doing all of that together. I might even dare to say limoncello, but we'll wait till you tell the end of the summer how we did.
Okay, I guess, Matt, a lot of questions about what's going to go on with special studies this summer.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So yeah, and I've answered a few of those folks in the chat, and happy to talk about the way in which we're approaching this summer. Really, we're looking at being able to offer classes in two different ways. As we look at the possibilities with larger classroom spaces, we are going to be hoping to have a limited number of on-person classes, both in larger classroom spaces and in outdoor spaces on the grounds, but it'll certainly be a reduction from the sheer number we have during a typical summer assembly season. But we're equally excited about, while we're doing that, also continuing to use our online classroom at learn.chq.org. I'll just give a quick example of what this can allow for us to do. This past summer, our Writer Center, for the first time, was looking at what does it mean where the audience for, or I should say the students for those writing classes don't simply need to be those that gather in 1 week, but that we can actually look at this over a number of weeks. And in doing so, give more time for writers to be doing the writing, come back and getting that kind of reflection. So we're excited about what our online classroom allows us to do. So we'll be working closely, Karen Chavone and a number of others, looking at what we can offer both in a limited number of larger classroom spaces on the grounds and through the online classroom.
Emily, I have 2 questions. One is pretty straightforward. Excuse me, will the no amp pass include or exclude morning worship, Sunday morning worship, or I guess morning worship generally?
Yes, it would include morning worship because that is offered to the general regional population at no charge on a regular basis, and that will continue. And certainly Sundays remain free, so it's included in that too. And the only caveat that I would offer is up to the capacity of the venue. So based on historic attendance, we shouldn't have any problem accommodating demand even at a 50% capacity of the amphitheater.
And then the second question goes to do with pricing and some concerns that the AMP pass, the traditional pass, seems pretty close to what last year's pricing was, and now people have to pay for popular entertainment.
Sure. So as we explained in the last webinar, if you were able to watch that, we sort of showed you how pricing works at Chautauqua. There are some very rational aspects of our pricing process, which includes looking at historic pricing, what the market will bear, and what it costs for us to put the program on. Michael mentioned at the start of this program, doing this even with a reduced program schedule is going to be more costly for the institution. I would imagine a number of things in your world will be more costly in this COVID environment. So that's one of the factors as well. The way we looked at the pricing was we considered what we took out and we removed that from the pass, which is about a $50 discount. When you buy a gate pass at Chautauqua, you're never paying full price for anything. It's discounted significantly, not only on the day pass rate, but also even the day pass rate, which would be our fullest price, doesn't ever cover the full cost of attendance. That's why what Jeff does for us and his team and the advancement team and all of you and your philanthropy is so important to us. So it is a combination of cost, historic pricing, the fact that we have 50% of what we could typically sell. We don't think we're going to be able to sell more than 50% of the capacity of the amphitheater. So there's a scarcity factor that also figures into that price. The other thing is that we are offering you the opportunity to purchase the no amp pass and then a la carte purchase the programs that you wish. So if that price point is problematic for you, you do have a way to sort of create your own price, if you will, create your own program by purchasing that no amp pass and only purchasing tickets to the events that are of interest to you. And CHQ Assembly will also be there to fill in the gaps.
Michael, is it possible that program or seating capacity may increase as regulations change if we're allowed to have 75% seating?
Sure. One of the real challenges of trying to plan for a summer assembly season in the midst of a pandemic like this is, and we've all experienced this, the way that we've engaged in a pandemic world seems to change every day. We learn more every day. Cases go down, cases go up. As I noted at the top of this program, vaccines started rolling out in the United States this week. We certainly hope that they will have a significant impact, not only on the safety of Chautauquans who we love, but on our ability to do a program. The 50% factor came from guidance and best practice of what other festivals are doing around the country. Should the world get significantly better between now and the end of June, it is absolutely possible for us to scale up capacity. What is not likely is that you will see significantly more program. And the reason for that is that the planning on program just takes a lot of time. So I use as an example our program in performing and visual arts. Many of those programs are planned 3 years in advance, or they start the planning work 3 years in advance. Having a 3-month lead time to know that it might be better won't allow those things to happen. Plus, for us, depending on when we would anticipate knowing that things were significantly better, there's a small army of people that we hire to operate a Chautauqua Summer Assembly, and there's ramp up and there's scarcity there as well. So again, if conditions are far better, yes, it is likely, and we would celebrate being able to say we can actually have 75% in the AMP or 80% in the AMP. What's not likely is dramatically increased program, mostly because of scale up time and cost.
Shannon, a couple of questions about healthcare in the area. Will the clinic on the grounds be open during the season? Want to comment, please?
Sure. We're actually in touch with Karen Sakala, who's the president of Westfield Memorial Hospital, and she has just recently let us know that they are hoping, they've applied to the state to be a community provider of vaccines. So they're hoping to be part of the vaccination effort in the state, but still a TBD status there. And also they are planning at this point to operate the full clinic schedule that you're used to seeing in 40 hours a week. And that will open in June. So the plan is to expect business as usual with the clinic and hope for a vaccination effort in the local area.
While I have you, do we plan to require people to be vaccinated to come to Chautauqua? You've talked about the possibility of being able to get one. What about testing?
Yeah, those are the types of questions that we're not making decisions on yet, and that's the sort of balance and timing that the tightrope we're trying to walk, as I'm sure is true for all of you and your families as you try to plan. We want to give time for the ever-evolving news. Vaccines in the country just started this week. We've heard expectations that there may be changes to mask mandates in early 2021. There's a lot of moving parts, and we don't think it makes sense to make specific decisions now when the likelihood of a changed landscape is so high come February, March, April time period. I really understand the desire for people to get these answers as you make your plans, but I think any answer I give today could very significantly change. So we're trying to give ourselves enough time to absorb the news that's coming at all of us right now.
I'm going to turn this back over to Michael for a few closing comments, and then I'll have a few housekeeping announcements.
Thanks, Jeff. And I just wanted an opportunity to thank everyone who signed on to this webinar. I hope you see that each time that we've asked you for feedback, your feedback is informing our thinking. All of what we have been discussing about is in service to being able to present as normal a Chautauqua experience as possible. And I would ask, a donor reminded me of this week, that in March, April, and May, when we were trying to navigate the earliest days of the pandemic, we asked you all to be teammates with us on this, recognizing that it was uncharted territory. I know that we are coming up on month 10 or so of feeling locked down and quarantined and hearing regulations and waiting for vaccines, but we're still very much navigating a brand new environment as we try to build back program and a summer assembly season for Chautauqua. So in many ways, the message is the same. This is not an apples to apples comparison. We are not back to a quote unquote normal Chautauqua season, which means that we really need everyone that is signing in to this call and all who love Chautauqua to link arms with us. And to recognize that we're going to get through this together. So this is not planning in normal times, and we need you just as much as we've needed you in 2020. And we're grateful for your ongoing thoughts, support, for your philanthropy, for your participation. I believe that we will all experience a pretty magical 2021 Chautauqua Summer Assembly season, if for no other reason than we are intending to gather with one another for this incredible thing that we do each summer. So hang with us, keep talking to us, know that we still need you. Remind each other and ourselves that this is not business as usual. So that's why you're seeing changes, and we ask you to be patient with us and to look at this as an adventure and a journey that we will get through, but only if we do it together. And we're deeply grateful that that is the posture that most Chautauquans have shown up with throughout this. So thanks again, and I'll turn it back to Jeff.
Thanks, Michael. I would remind you that this webinar will be online up at 2021.chq.org. If you'd like to review any piece of it, the slides the presentation will be part of that. I would encourage you, if you have questions that haven't been answered, that you don't see an answer to online, to please reach out. We're all quite accessible, and we'll be most happy to respond to any questions that you might have. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all, as Michael did, for your love for Chautauqua, your advocacy of Chautauqua. We need your support and participation more than ever, perhaps. Thanks so much.